The day the Arcturian Empire arrived, Dr. Sarah Chen was deep within her quantum research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. The first indication that something was wrong came not from the sky, but from the bizarre readings on her instruments. Quantum fluctuations that defied every known law of physics rippled through her laboratory sensors, creating patterns she'd only theorized about in her most ambitious papers. "Dr. Chen," her assistant's voice trembled through the intercom. "You need to see this." Sarah emerged from the underground facility into a world transformed. Massive crystalline ships hung in the Colorado sky, their surfaces refracting sunlight in impossible ways. They were beautiful, in the way that apex predators were beautiful, deadly and precise. The Arcturians didn't bother with traditional first contact protocols. Their message, broadcast simultaneously in every human language, was simple. Earth was now under their protection, and resistance would be met with immediate pacification. They claimed to be saviors, protecting younger species from themselves. Their true nature became apparent within hours. Dr. James Chen, Sarah's father and one of Earth's leading experts on theoretical physics, recognized something in their technology that others missed. The quantum signatures, he told Sarah during a secured video call, his aged face grave with concern. "They're not just advanced, they're impossible. Unless..." The connection cut off mid-sentence. Sarah's screens filled with static, then darkness. When they flickered back to life, they showed only the Empire's symbol, a spiraling helix of crystalline thorns. In the following days, as Earth's government struggled to respond to the invasion, Sarah tried desperately to reach her father. The Arcturians had established peacekeeping zones in major cities, their crystalline enforcers patrolling streets with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. But the Chen family estate in the mountains of Taiwan, where her father had retreated to continue his research, remained ominously silent. Sarah knew her father had been onto something significant. James Chen had always been different, brilliant beyond measure, with insights that seemed to come from somewhere beyond pure scientific reasoning. He'd raised Sarah alone after her mother's death, teaching her not just physics but old stories, ancient legends that he insisted were more than myths. "There are forces in this universe," he'd tell her, "that science is only beginning to understand." When she finally managed to breach the Empire's communications blackout, what she found shattered her world. The Chen estate had been reduced to ashes. Imperial records, obtained through a resistance contact, listed her father as neutralized, a threat to galactic security due to his dangerous and heretical theories about the true nature of the Empire's technology. But it was the surveillance footage from the estate that truly changed everything. In the final moments before the Empire's enforcers struck, James Chen stood calmly in his study. As reality-warping weapons prepared to fire, he looked directly into the camera and smiled, not with fear, but with a strange satisfaction. His last words, picked up by the surveillance system, were in an ancient language Sarah had never heard him speak before. The Empire had made a fatal mistake, but they didn't know it yet. They thought they had killed a brilliant but ultimately harmless old scientist. They didn't know about the quantum equations Sarah found in her father's final transmission. Equations that seemed to bridge the gap between modern physics and something far older and more powerful. They didn't know about the strange dreams that began haunting Sarah's nights. Dreams of ancient powers and forgotten knowledge. Most importantly, they didn't know about the changes beginning to manifest in Sarah herself. The first time it happened, she was alone in her lab, grief and rage overwhelming her as she reviewed the footage of her father's last moments. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, her shadow on the wall seemed to move independently of her body. When she looked at her reflection in the darkened computer screen, her eyes held a glimmer of something ancient and terrible. The Arcturian Empire had killed an old man, believing they were simply removing an obstacle to their dominion over Earth. They didn't realize that James Chen had been far more than a physicist. They didn't know that his daughter was more than just a scientist, and they certainly didn't know that they had just triggered a chain of events that would shake the foundations of their empire. As Sarah Chen stood in her underground lab, watching her shadow dance in ways that defied physics, she finally understood what her father had been preparing her for all these years. The equations in his final transmission weren't just mathematics. They were a key, unlocking something that had been dormant in her blood for generations. The Empire had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive species barely worth their attention. Instead, they had awakened something that had been sleeping since the dawn of human civilization. And as Sarah felt the ancient power coursing through her veins, she knew that the real war was just beginning. The transformation began in earnest 3 weeks after her father's death. Sarah Chen woke in her underground quarters to find her lab's backup generators failing, every electronic device within 50 feet of her pulsing with strange energy. The air itself felt charged, heavy with possibility. When she reached out to touch her desk lamp, the electricity arced between her fingers like living threads of lightning. In her father's final transmission, buried beneath layers of quantum equations, she had found coordinates. They led to a remote monastery in Tibet, a place her father had visited regularly throughout her childhood. The Empire's patrols were heavy in that region, drawn by unusual energy readings they couldn't explain. But Sarah had learned to move unseen, her new abilities allowing her to slip through their surveillance nets like a shadow through darkness. The monastery appeared abandoned when she arrived, its ancient stones weathered by centuries of mountain winds. But as she approached the main gate, she felt something respond to her presence. Symbols carved into the stone began to glow with a faint purple light, the same language her father had spoken in his final moments. "We have waited long for your return, daughter of the ancient blood." A voice spoke from the shadows. An elderly monk emerged, his eyes reflecting the same otherworldly gleams Sarah had begun to see in her own. "Your father prepared us for this day." Inside the monastery's inner sanctum, Sarah discovered the truth. Her father had been part of an ancient order, guardians of a power that predated human civilization. The monks showed her scrolls that told of beings who had walked Earth before the first cities rose, beings who had seeded their essence into certain bloodlines. The Chen family was one of many such lineages, each carrying a fragment of this ancient power. "The Arcturians are not strangers to Earth," the old monk explained, unrolling a scroll that showed familiar crystalline ships, but dated thousands of years ago. They came before, in cycles. Each time, they were driven back by the Guardians. But this time, they believed our power had waned, that we had forgotten ourselves. Sarah's training began immediately. The monks taught her to harness the energy flowing through her veins, to understand the true nature of reality that her quantum physics had only begun to grasp. She learned that the Empire's advanced technology was based on principles her ancestors had mastered millennia ago, the manipulation of reality through consciousness itself. But the Empire was growing suspicious. Their sensors detected massive energy fluctuations from the monastery, power signatures that matched their own technology, but felt older, more primal. They sent their most advanced scout ships to investigate, crystalline vessels that could bend light around themselves. Sarah felt them coming. Standing in the monastery's courtyard, she reached out with her newfound senses and touched the minds of the Imperial pilots. Their consciousness was ordered, rigidly hierarchical, bound by the same crystalline precision as their ships. But underneath that order, she sensed fear, fear of the ancient powers they had thought long dead. The attack came at dawn. Imperial enforcers breached the monastery's outer walls with reality-warping weapons, expecting to find primitive resistance. Instead, they found Sarah waiting for them. As the first rays of sunlight touched the mountain peaks, she demonstrated just how much she had learned. The enforcers fired their weapons, but Sarah didn't dodge. Instead, she reached out and caught the reality-warping energies with her bare hands, reshaping them with the same principles her ancestors had mastered eons ago. The crystalline weapons shattered, their impossible geometries unraveling as she exerted her will upon them. "Your empire has forgotten something crucial," she told the stunned enforcers, her voice carrying echoes of ancient power. You built your weapons using principles you barely understand, copying fragments of knowledge left behind by beings far greater than yourselves. But that power, it never truly belonged to you. To demonstrate her point, she raised her hands, and the very fabric of reality rippled around her. The enforcer's crystalline armor began to resonate, vibrating at frequencies that threatened to tear them apart. In panic, they retreated, their supposedly invincible technology useless against powers it had been based upon, but never fully understood. As Sarah watched them flee, she felt other awakening across the globe. The Empire's invasion had triggered something, a worldwide resurrection of dormant bloodlines. In Japan, a teenager discovered she could commune with digital networks by thought alone. In Brazil, a young doctor found he could heal with a touch. In Nigeria, a historian began to remember lives spanning thousands of years. The monks gathered around her, their ancient eyes gleaming with anticipation. "It begins," the eldest said, his voice carrying both hope and warning. The Empire's gravest mistake was not killing their father. It was believing that humanity's greatest powers lay in our technology. They never understood that we are the descendants of beings that walked between stars before their species learned to make fire. Sarah nodded, feeling the truth of his words in her bones. The Empire had come to Earth expecting to find primitives. Instead, they had awakened the sleeping giants of human potential. As she stood in the monastery courtyard, watching the Imperial ships retreat into the distance, she knew that this was just the beginning. The real war would not be fought with ships and weapons, but with powers that the Empire had only glimpsed in their most ambitious research. And humanity, after millennia of slumber, was finally ready to reclaim its birthright. The Empire's response to their defeat at the monastery was swift and brutal. Crystalline warships appeared in the skies above Earth's major cities, their weapons trained on population centers. Their message was clear: surrender the awakened ones, or watch your world burn. But they had miscalculated once again, underestimating how quickly the ancient powers were spreading. Sarah Chen had established a network of resistance cells, connecting with other awakened individuals across the globe. Maya Patel, the teenage tech witch from Mumbai, could slip through digital networks like a ghost, disrupting Imperial communications with thought alone. Dr. Marcus Santos in Rio had transformed his hospital into a sanctuary, healing those injured by Imperial weapons and awakening latent powers in others. And in Lagos, Dr. Adebayo Okafor had begun recovering memories of ancient libraries and forgotten technologies that put the Empire's achievements to shame. The Shadow War began in earnest on a moonless night in September. Sarah stood atop a skyscraper in Hong Kong, watching Imperial patrols sweep the streets below with their reality-scanning devices. She reached out with her mind, touching the consciousness of every awakened individual in the city. It was time. "Remember," she broadcast to her network, "they expect us to fight like them, with weapons and ships and brute force. But we are not them. We are the children of those who wrote the laws of reality they barely comprehend. Tonight, we show them why." The attack began with silence. Across the globe, at precisely the same moment, every piece of Imperial technology simply stopped working. Maya, interfacing directly with the crystalline network that connected their ships, had planted seeds of chaos in their systems. Their perfectly ordered lattices began to dissolve, corrupted by algorithms that predated digital computing. The Empire's response was panic. Their ships, suddenly blind and deaf, hung useless in the skies. Their enforcers, cut off from their command network, found themselves facing shadows that moved with purpose. In New York, London, Tokyo, and 100 other cities, the awakened ones emerged from hiding. Sarah led the charge in Hong Kong, her powers now fully manifested. She walked through Imperial barriers as if they were mist, the reality-warping fields around their bases parting before her like curtains. Behind her came others, ordinary humans who had discovered extraordinary abilities. A street vendor who could forge unbreakable shields from thin air. A taxi driver who could step between moments of time. a schoolteacher who spoke words that could reshape matter itself. The Empire's ground forces rallied, falling back on their physical weapons when their energy weapons failed. But they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to break every rule of warfare they knew. The awakened ones didn't rely on tactics or strategy. They wielded powers that made such concepts obsolete. In the Imperial command ship hovering above Beijing, High Commander Vexthor watched in horror as reports flooded in from around the planet. His supposedly invincible army was being dismantled by powers that his scientists insisted couldn't exist. "They're not just fighting back," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling. "They're undoing us. Everything we built, every advantage we thought we had. They're showing us it was all borrowed power, incomplete understanding." Sarah could feel the Empire's confusion and fear as she led her team through their main base in Hong Kong. The crystalline corridors, designed to amplify their reality warping technology, now worked against them. The awakened ones could feel the underlying patterns, the ancient principles that the Empire had stumbled upon but never truly mastered. "Your civilization discovered fragments of our ancestors' knowledge," Sarah explained to a captured Imperial officer, her voice echoing with power that made the crystals around them resonate. "You built an empire on technological achievements that were pale imitations of what humanity once was. And now we remember. Now we wake up." The officer's response was unexpected, not fear, but recognition. "The old ones," he whispered, using a term that Sarah had seen in the monastery scrolls. "The legends were true. You're their descendants." This revelation spread through the Imperial forces like wildfire. Some fought harder, desperate to maintain their dominion. Others began to question everything they had been taught about their own history, their supposed technological superiority. The Empire's perfect order began to crack. But victory would not come easily. As Sarah and her network of awakened ones pushed the Empire back, she sensed something massive stirring in the space above Earth. The Empire's supreme leadership had finally recognized the true nature of the threat they faced. They were preparing to deploy weapons that they had sworn never to use, devices that could unravel the very fabric of space-time. Sarah stood in the ruins of the Hong Kong base, her consciousness extended across the global network of awakened minds. The real battle was about to begin, and its outcome would determine not just Earth's fate, but the destiny of countless worlds. The Empire had wanted to subjugate a primitive species, but instead they had triggered an awakening that would reshape the galaxy. As the first signs of the Empire's doomsday weapons appeared in the sky, massive constructs that bent light itself around them, Sarah sent out a final message to her network. "They think they're fighting for survival. We're fighting for something more. We're fighting for remembrance, for the reclamation of everything humanity was meant to be. And that makes all the difference." The Empire's doomsday weapons cast impossible shadows across Earth's skies, massive constructs of crystalline technology that seemed to fold space itself around them. These were the Void Architects, devices so powerful that their use had been banned across known space. They didn't just destroy their targets, they erased them from reality itself. Sarah Chen stood atop the monastery in Tibet. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the global network of awakened ones. Through their shared awareness, she could feel the fear rippling through humanity as those terrible shadows lengthened. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. A recognition, a remembrance of power that ran deeper than the foundations of the Earth itself. "They mean to unmake us." Dr. Adebayo's voice echoed through the network from Lagos. "These weapons, I remember them now. Our ancestors faced them before, in wars that reshaped galaxies." Maya's digital consciousness flashed through global networks, analyzing the Void Architect's structure. Their technology is based on the same principles as everything else, just scaled up to horrifying levels. But it's still just an echo of the original power, our power. The Empire's ultimatum came as a planet-wide broadcast, their message transmitted in frequencies that resonated with human DNA itself. "Surrender now," High Commander Vexthor's voice boomed, or watches your world is unwritten from existence. We did not want this, but you leave us no choice. The Old One's power cannot be allowed to re-emerge in the galaxy. Sarah's response was not in words. Instead, she reached deep into the wellspring of power that her father's death had awakened in her. Around the world, other awakened ones did the same, their consciousness merging into something greater than the sum of its parts. Through their shared awareness, ancient memories surfaced. Knowledge of wars fought before Earth's continents took their current shape, of powers that had shaped the very structure of reality. The Void Architects began their devastating work. The first beam struck the Pacific Ocean, creating a sphere of unreality that began to expand, consuming everything it touched. But as the void grew, it encountered something unexpected. A barrier of pure consciousness, woven from the combined will of Earth's awakened ones. Sarah stood at the center of this vast network of minds, directing power that hadn't been wielded since the dawn of time. Through her consciousness flowed the combined strength of humanity's hidden legacy, the mathematical precision of Dr. Chen's quantum understanding, the digital mastery of Maya's tech wisdom, the healing force of Dr. Santos' life energy, and the ancient memories of countless others. "You fear us," Sarah broadcast to the Imperial fleet, her voice carrying the weight of millennia, "because you remember what we once were. Your entire empire is built on fragments of our ancestors' knowledge, on powers you learned to imitate but never truly understood. But we are not your enemies. We are your wake-up call." The Void Architects fired again, their beams of unreality striking targets across the globe. But everywhere they struck, they found the same resistance. Human consciousness shaped into barriers that their technology couldn't breach. The Empire had created their weapons based on ancient principles, but now they faced beings who understood those principles at their most fundamental level. In orbit, Imperial sensors detected something unprecedented. The Earth itself seemed to be responding to the Awakened One's power, its magnetic field transforming into patterns that their scientists had only seen in theoretical models of universe creation. The planet's consciousness, dormant for eons, was awakening alongside its human inhabitants. High Commander Vexthor watched in awe as his ultimate weapons were not just defeated, but transformed. The Awakened Ones weren't simply blocking the Void Architects' effects. They were reaching into the fundamental structure of the weapons themselves, transforming their reality-erasing power into something new. Sarah felt the change occurring at a quantum level as she directed this vast network of power. The void energy, rather than destroying, began to create. Where the beams struck, reality didn't unravel, it evolved. Plants sprouted from barren ground, damaged ecosystems healed themselves, and the very air seemed to shimmer with renewed vitality. "This is what your empire forgot," Sarah projected, her consciousness touching every Imperial mind in Earth's vicinity. "The greatest power isn't in destruction or dominion. It's in transformation, in the ability to take what is and reshape it into what could be." The Empire's fleets hung motionless in orbit, their crews transfixed by the display of power below them. Through the Awakened One's network, Sarah could sense the change in their collective consciousness, fear giving way to wonder, then to recognition. They were witnessing not just the rebirth of an ancient power, but the emergence of something entirely new. As the transformed energy of the Void Architects continued to reshape Earth's surface, Sarah prepared for the final phase of humanity's awakening. The Empire had brought their ultimate weapons to Earth expecting to end a threat. Instead, they had become catalysts for a transformation that would reshape not just humanity, but the entire galaxy's understanding of what was possible. The time had come to show the Empire and the galaxy that humanity's true power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the capacity to evolve, to transform, and to transcend. The real question was no longer whether Earth would survive, but what it would become in the process of its awakening. The transformation of Earth continued for 7 days and 7 nights, as the ancient texts had once predicted. The Empire's Void Architects, Their devastating power, transformed by humanity's awakened consciousness, had become instruments of creation rather than destruction. Where their energy touched, reality itself bloomed with new possibilities. Sarah Chin, standing in what had once been the monastery's courtyard, but was now a nexus of pure creative force, felt the change rippling through not just Earth, but the surrounding space. The Empire's vast fleet remained in orbit, their crews transfixed by the unprecedented display of power below them. Through the global network of awakened minds, she could sense their growing understanding, and their fear gradually transforming into something else entirely. High Commander Vexthor's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, a gesture that violated every protocol in Imperial history. The crystalline vessel landed in the transformed courtyard, its surface reflecting the new reality that surrounded it. When Vexthor emerged, he did so alone and unarmed. "In all our history," he said, his voice carrying both awe and resignation, "we never truly understood what we had found in those ancient ruins. We thought we had mastered the Old One's technology, but we were children playing with forces beyond our comprehension." Sarah stepped forward, the network of awakened minds humming with shared purpose. "Your Empire's greatest mistake wasn't in conquering worlds," she replied, "but in believing that power flows from dominion rather than understanding. The technology you discovered, it was never meant to be used as weapons. It was meant to be a bridge." Around them, the transformed landscape continued to evolve. Plants that had never existed on Earth took root alongside familiar ones, creating hybrid ecosystems that somehow felt both alien and natural. The very air seemed to pulse with possibility, as if reality itself had become more flexible, more open to change. Through their shared consciousness, the awakened ones began to access memories that went beyond Earth's history, glimpses of a time when humanity's ancestors had been part of a vast galactic community. The Old Ones hadn't been conquerors or rulers, but guardians and guides, using their mastery of consciousness to nurture the development of countless species. "Your Empire," Dr. Adebayo's voice echoed through the network, his ancient memories now fully accessible, "found our ancestors' tools but missed their purpose. The crystalline technology wasn't meant to bend reality. It was meant to harmonize with it, to help consciousness evolve across the cosmos. Maya, her consciousness now able to bridge both digital and quantum realms, added her own understanding. The network you built to control your empire, it was originally designed to connect minds across galaxies, to share knowledge and growth, not to dominate and suppress." Vexthor's response surprised them all. He knelt, touching the transformed Earth with his bare hand, an act that would have been considered heretical in Imperial culture. "We forgot," he said simply. "Over millennia, we forgot that we too were once guided by the Old Ones. We took their gifts and turned them into chains." The change that had begun on Earth was already spreading. Through the Imperial network, now transformed by Maya's influence, news of humanity's awakening reached every corner of the Empire. On countless worlds, beings who had lived under Imperial rule for generations began to feel stirrings of their own dormant potential. Sarah extended her consciousness toward Vexthor, offering not dominance but understanding. Through their connection, she shared the true history, not just of humanity, but of all the species the Old Ones had watched over. The Empire hadn't been wrong to seek advancement, but they had lost sight of its true purpose. "Your empire doesn't need to end," she told him. "It needs to transform. Just as we have transformed, just as Earth has transformed. The power you sought was never about control. It was about growth, about helping all beings reach their full potential." The next few months saw changes that reshaped the galaxy. The Empire, under Vexthor's leadership, began its own transformation. The crystalline ships that had once brought conquest now carried knowledge and connection. Earth became a center of learning, where beings from across the cosmos came to understand the true nature of consciousness and reality. Dr. Chen's quantum research facility, now expanded beyond its original bounds, became a place where science and ancient wisdom merge. Maya established a new kind of network that connected minds across space itself, while Dr. Santos's healing techniques spread to worlds that had never known such restoration. But perhaps the most profound change was in humanity itself. As more and more people awakened to their hidden potential, Earth's society evolved into something that bridged the ancient and the new. They had not merely reclaimed their ancestors' power, they had transformed it into something greater. Sarah often returned to the monastery, now a gathering place for beings from across the galaxy. In its courtyard, where imperial weapons had once been transformed into tools of creation, she would watch as humans and aliens alike learned to touch the consciousness that connected all things. We were never meant to be conquerors or conquered, she would tell those who came to learn. We were meant to be bridges between past and future, between technology and consciousness, between all the diverse forms of life that share this cosmos. The Empire's mistake in killing her father had indeed changed everything, not through revenge or destruction, but through a transformation that none could have predicted. In seeking to suppress humanity, they had instead helped spark an awakening that would reshape the very future of conscious life in the galaxy. And somewhere, Sarah felt certain, her father was smiling, knowing that his sacrifice had helped humanity not just remember its past, but create an entirely new future, one where the power of consciousness and the potential for transformation would never again be forgotten or misused.